So welcome to Saturday. We are at the end of our first week of the virtual Ride to Provide. And what a week it's been. We've just looking at some stats this morning, we've clocked up 16,500 kilometres as a group, which is phenomenal. We've got some teams that are just punching out the Ks. So the Murray River Riders, they're almost at halfway. So they've clocked up 370 Ks this week alone. Now they're a team of two down in Echuca.
Team of two?
Yeah, and they're simply smashing it.
Where's the odd couple?
The odd couple, very close behind the Murray River Riders. So they're at about 350.
Wow.
But we've got a corporate group from Singapore, so Team Alterix, they're at 250.
Good on you, Joe.
And the team from Nevada, so hashtag 800 better together. They're about to hit 200. But the really interesting thing about this team is they're walking, they're running, they're riding, and there's also a guy playing the drums.
Yeah, right.
So he's playing the drums and converting that into kilometres. So there's some really fun stuff happening out there. And then in the individuals, we've got Isaac Tate and Nick Race. So they're sitting around the 250, which is just like 1 week in. That's amazing. And Erin Dodd from Melbourne. So she's not far behind on 218. So,
go, Erin.
Yeah, fantastic work. In the fundraising, we've got 72,000 that's been raised so far. And when we say that, we're probably a little bit more than that because we're still capturing everybody's Facebook fundraising. So if you're someone fundraising on Facebook and haven't sent us your link yet, send it through so that we can make sure that we're adding that to that tally. So let's get started. We are riding stage 4 of our 4-leg day 2 ride on the Thailand ride. So we'll actually finish at the hotel that we stay at on the second night. Best sunrise on tour.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
It's magnificent. So we'll be finishing there today. And this morning I'm joined by Pete and Dave Criniti. And they're going to have a chat during this session just to keep you engaged, punch out those Ks. And we're getting some really great feedback about the interviews. So this is another one that's just going to blow your mind. So a little bit about Dave. He's one of the hardest working runners you'll find anywhere on the planet. Apart from being a sub 2-hour 18 marathoner, Dave, who works as a school teacher in Sydney, is the founder of the Run Beyond project, which aims to help students facing adversity to develop skills in goal setting, commitment and resilience using running as a medium. Here to share his secrets for setting and beating goals is Dave. Now I'll hand it over to Pete to have a chat.
Thanks, CT. Good morning, Dave. How are you?
Good morning, Pete. Well, thanks. Yourself?
Yeah, good. Now I've got to put it out to the group that you've given up your morning run. At 7 o'clock, how far would you have normally run by now?
On a Saturday, up to 30 or a little bit over. But I'll make sure that I'm keeping honest and I'll get that done later today.
Yeah, good on you. Well, thanks for readjusting your diary and run schedule to have a chat with us. I think, there's some magnificent connections between what you do and what we try to do at Hands. And as CT was reading out the stats and so forth there, I thought of, you and what you're doing, and we'll certainly talk extensively about the Run Beyond project, but, collectively hosting something like this and having people cumulatively clock up 16,000 kilometres is beyond, the same with Run Beyond, what you're able to do, get a lot of people moving that might not be otherwise. It's a really cool thing. And as I say, we'll talk about that more later. The other thing that struck me was at lunchtime today, we've got Scott Stein, one of our directors, who's going to have a conversation with the staff at one of our homes and our English language teacher there, because we run a program where we have in the homes, certainly pre-COVID, English language teachers there running advanced programs and additional programs to what they get at school. And that's a nice segue into what you do as an English language teacher, as English as a second language at Chester Hill High School, yeah?
Yeah, that's right. So been at Chester Hill High School for about 15 years now. Actually started off as PDHPE, but along the way transitioned. I worked at their intensive English centre for a while, and now I'm back in the main high school setting, teaching English as a second language to people transitioning into high school.
And it's certainly, Dave, I grew up at George's Hall. I went to school at Bass High for high school, and I often played sport against Sefton, Chester Hill and so forth. And I reckon it's probably a different place now than when I was there some, I don't know, 35 years ago, back in the early 80s.
Yeah, it's very diverse. It has become incredibly more so over the years. We've now got students from 70 backgrounds represented within our school, so that gives you an indication of how far afield all our students come from.
And what's when I left school, I joined the police and I worked at Cabramatta, and in the late 80s, and it was a real rich diversity of cultures in that area. But at that time, it had a high crime rate. It's certainly now a much safer place, and that real rich cultural place to be. Is Chester Hill and the areas around there similar?
Yeah, definitely. We've got again that diversity brings that sort of rich community out, and we've got a lot of people from Asia, from the Middle East, from all over that contribute to that.
Yeah. And when you went through school, obviously, and through uni, when did you realise that your calling was to become a teacher and make such a big impact upon society and the generation of the next heading into workplace and our future leaders?
Yeah, well, I got on really well with my teachers at school, and I guess my cross country coach in particular, and so I left school with the idea that I would be a PE teacher, and and then I got into Chester Hill, and it's a wonderful school, and I had the opportunity to go across to our IEC and start teaching PE there initially, an intensive English centre is basically the first port of call for new arrivals into Australia, and its function is to essentially prepare them for mainstream high school life, prepare those students for mainstream high school. And so initially I was teaching PE there, and then had the opportunity to teach a range of subjects, and really at an IEC, it doesn't matter what subject you're teaching, you're teaching English predominantly first, and using that subject as a way to communicate English and bring their skills up to speed to be able to learn that subject in high school. And I guess then I really appreciated, it was there that I really appreciated, the way that these kids faced this challenge, and I guess I just I've sort of transitioned across to being an ESL, retrained, became an ESL teacher at that time, and really admired the fact that these kids faced this additional challenge of not only progressing towards finishing their schooling, but doing so while learning another language, just wanted to continue to be involved in that, and help the kids as best I could.
Yeah, fantastic. And I think we'll circle back to the connection between running and the creation of Run Beyond Project a little bit later in the chat. But let's go back to when running became something that was important to you. And if I'm not mistaken, it was year 5 cross country.
Yeah, correct. So it was the first school team I ever made. You know, it was never much of a cricket star or a football. Wasn't too crash hot at those. My eyesight's kind of not the best. So maybe that had something to do with not being so great at ball sports, requiring great coordination or anything else. But I seem to have a little bit of an aptitude for running. I actually possibly helped along by a job I had at the time. My dad sort of teed me up with a job, basically delivering junk mail.
Right.
And so I kind of, as a young kid, I sort of spent a lot of time on my feet, I guess. And not long after that was when I made my first cross country team, and I kind of immediately thought, yeah, I kind of like this, and I've basically loved running ever since.
And you've obviously embraced it, as you said, and you found a distance that for you is your favourite. How long was it before you've settled into running marathons?
Yeah, look, obviously that wasn't while I was at school. Although I did actually do my first kind of marathon at school. It was actually did the 40-hour famine one year, but I kind of decided instead of doing a 40-hour famine, I'd run 40 kilometers. And
Right.
so I had done that at school, but my cross country teacher was an ultra runner. So I kind of actually left school, and in my early uni days, I actually tried my hand at a few ultras. So I sort of came to marathons from the other direction to most people. Most people kind of, start at 5 and 10K races and work their way up. I kind of started at ultras and sort of worked my way down.
Yeah. And when did you realise that you were better than the average random out there running and shuffling their way through 42 Ks with a goal of breaking 4 hours? When did you realise that there was a talent there within Dave Criniti's legs?
I've gradually kind of improved over the years, and I guess I mean, for me, it's not so much about, I was always just very time oriented. And, when I first, I did my first actual marathon, like I said, after I'd already done a couple ultras in 2003 at Sydney. And I kind of knew that I'd be under 240, and I sort of, I got a 235 there. And at that time, sub 230 just seemed a way away, I got close, and then in 2005 I had a bit of an injury and spent most of the year on the sidelines. And then, so it didn't end up being till 2007 I sort of snuck under there, and then, obviously the next sort of, runners like round numbers and fives. So it was, 225 was the next target. And so it took me a while, but I think it was 2011, I sort of cracked that for the first time. And in that same year, I sort of had a bit of a leap and got down to under 221. And, obviously I was sort of had my sights well set on that. And then, things, the best laid plans of mice and men, So that ended up, after years of injury and trying and false starts and whatnot, it took me to 2017 to get there. By which time I was 39. So I think the next 5 is a sub 215. I think that might be beyond me, but like I said, it was always about personal times, I guess, with my own running, and that's what I've been chasing.
Yeah, cool. And Dave, just we've got the footage of the road in Thailand at the moment, and I reckon every rider who's on here at the moment is going, I'm glad I'm riding at home, because now it's it's raining in Thailand,
Yeah.
and the guys would be getting wet. But as we say, once you're out there, once you're clipped in and it rains, well, you get wet. But there's a few fair weather riders amongst us, and I'm at the front of the pack when it comes to fair weather riders. If I wake up and I hear the rain, I'm not going anywhere.
Yeah, I'd imagine though, if on the road there in Thailand, even raining, it would probably be a fair sight warmer than it is in Sydney right now.
Yeah, it is, and the coldest part is when we're stopped at water stops. As soon as you stop moving, then it's when you get cool, because your body cools down pretty quickly. What about you? You wake up and hear the sound of the rain on the roof. Are you out of bed and runners on and into the rain?
Well, on a week morning, the running is sort of done via commute, so I've got a bit of time on the train to evaluate that, just how strong it is, and it's more a matter of my bag's not entirely waterproof, so will my school clothes for the day get drenched if I run in this? And if I think I can get away with it, I'll get off at the station and run. If not, I'll continue to through to the next station and bus it on to school.
Yeah, nice. So back to you were talking about the those round numbers and 225, 220. You went into the Berlin Marathon in 2017, and your goal was to breach which number?
Yeah, look, publicly, I guess it was sub 220, but I kind of privately hoped I was in form for, to sort of relatively comfortably do that. And I actually had to sort of laminate my splits for a big marathon and put them on my arm. And I had splits for 218 and a half. And just, I was kind of pretty methodical, I guess, especially in the first half, just trying to maintain that, and then sort of panned out pretty well. Was able to negative split and just crack 218, which was really great.
Yeah, well, it's pretty amazing. You said publicly you were put out there 220, that's what you wanted to crack, and you said privately you felt comfortable that was within you. Who within your, or how many within your inner circle knew that that's how you felt, or was that something that just you kept to yourself?
I had a couple people that sort of I'd trained with regularly that would sort of, bounce, strategies and things like that around, who sort of suggested approaches leading to around that time. So it wasn't entirely in my own head, but I had the advice of a couple of people who sort of knew my training and my performances relatively well, and that I trusted.
Yeah. And take us, let's live the last month or so before Berlin. You've got a fairly intense training program. There'll be a point where you start to taper and you'll head over. Talk us through the lead up before you get on the plane to head to Berlin, what that looks like for you.
Okay. One thing of note was probably, a bit of advice for your viewers. Be careful with your seafood. It was actually literally 2 weeks to the day before Berlin, Sunday, 2 weeks to the day. I went over to a friend's house after doing basically my last sort of decent long run that morning. It was a kind
Dave, just on that point, what's, when you say decent long run, what's that in your kilometres?
It was around 30 Ks. It wasn't, it was 2 weeks before, okay. So I wasn't doing anything massively long or massively hard, but it was kind of the last 30 K plus, and I think it was pretty much right on 30 Ks, and that afternoon went to a barbecue at a friend's house, and it was a kind of make your own pizzas situation, and I'd sort of put my typing on, and he was sort of tending to them in the pizza oven, and I sort of was engaged in conversation. He passed it to me. He said, "Do you reckon that's done?" And I kind of, in the back of my mind, I thought about saying, "Oh, pop it back in for a couple of minutes," but I was sort of too engaged in conversation and just took it and got into it. And that sort of came back to haunt me that night. And I went and saw the doctor on Monday, and he was sort of putting the fear of God into me, saying, "Oh, dehydration that sort of comes with food poisoning can set you back for 2 weeks." I thought, "Oh no," but I basically stayed off everything other than Hydrolite that day, and basically only missed that Monday of training, which wasn't going to be anything to didn't miss out on too much at the end, but it certainly did scare me. So there's some advice. Be very careful with your nutrition over your last few weeks, especially, I guess.
Absolutely, and stay away from the raw seafood.
That's right. But other than that, I guess I tend to probably have a relatively short taper. Just because when I get into my routine, my body's pretty used to the sort of Ks that I clock up. So I was probably at my regular mileage until 2 weeks out. Again, that last weekend, 2 weeks out was not too much on the intensity side. And then from then, just basically probably 80% of that mileage in that second week out, and then the last week obviously really dipped. And obviously, being in Europe, it was basically lost a day with travel anyway, and then just basically turning over and making sure I didn't put on too much weight with the carb loading.
Yeah, and so how far out from the race will you arrive in Berlin?
I think I got there around about a week before.
Yeah, right.
Oh, well, not necessarily in Berlin. I flew into Prague and had a couple of days there, and I was actually in Berlin in my accommodation just near the start by, I think, the Thursday, so about 4 days before.
Yeah, and is there anything you do to help you adjust to the time zones?
Oh, that was just, excuse me. Sorry. I guess that is just a matter of, being there about a week before and trying to get back into that normal sleep pattern.
Yep. And Dave, you talked about your runs leading up and around that 30K mark. You're you're running 42, and I guess if I can, without going into the coaching and so forth you do at the moment, one of the things that we have in Thailand on the roads that you're seeing before you now, our January rides are 800 kilometres over 8 days, and our first day is 56. Today the footage you're seeing will be 124 kilometres, and we have a lot of people who will join us, and it's a massive thing for them to embark on, and in their training, they're tackling a distance of riding 100 kilometres in a day for the first time, and some are certainly intimidated by that. But I'm interested on your thoughts, and if you can relate it from the coaching with the kids you do around if you've got a distance or a goal and you're achieving it for the first time. And for people running marathons, what's your recommendation around how far is their longest training distance they need to cover to feel comfortable and to then let the adrenaline of the day pull them towards the finish?
Yeah, that's the thing. Well, I think it's interesting that you mentioned the adrenaline of the day, because a lot of people have asked me you know, oh, should we get them doing, and teachers, this program's implemented in individual schools by their teachers, and I'm kind of teaching the teachers how to implement it. And some of them sort of say, you know, should we get the kids, if they're training for a 10K race, doing 10Ks before, and that's the sort of thing I mentioned. No, we don't want them doing the entire distance before the race, because then they lose some of that adrenaline of the day, and it loses some of its special meaning. But by the same token, you want them knowing that they're going to get there. So generally, sort of looking around about 70 to 80% of the distance is advisable to be covered in training, and you want to be covering that, and it being difficult, but it not having them, you know, sprawled out on the floor, because if they're sprawled out after 70% of the distance and absolutely cactus, then you know that maybe they're sort of biting off more than they can chew to be able to get an extra 30% out of themselves come race day. So I guess the important thing is obviously that gradual and progressive build up. And, you know, week by week, we'll sort of have this conversation with the kids. You know, they might start only doing a couple Ks, and sometimes even that, there needs to be walk breaks in the middle. But we'll start having these conversations about, okay, sort of if our goal's 10Ks, you know, all right, what percentage of the way to our goal are we? And when they do their first 5 kilometre, it might be, okay, now we're 50% of the way to our goal. And remember, guys, it was only a month ago that you were only 20% of the way there. So you've got a lot closer now. And the other thing I'll do is I'll sort of ask them, you know, give me a score out of 10. How hard was it today? And, you know, and if they're saying, oh, you know, 7 or 8, I'll say, well, you know, it's pretty good that it's, you know, it's 7 or 8. That's pretty hard. But if you're giving a 5 kilometers 7 or 8, remember you were giving 2 kilometers 8 or 9 a month ago. So so just being aware, I guess, of how far you've come, as well as how far you've got to go, because that sort of gives you an idea of the momentum that you're carrying as well.
I think it's such a good point. There's some real gold in there, like you said, around, you know, working up to it. And, you know, with these rides, as I say, the footage of what we're seeing now is, for our Southern ride, it's a first day post or beyond 100 Ks, but each of our legs, on average, are somewhere around, you know, 20, 22, 24 Ks, and then we stop, regroup, have a water stop, you know, fill up on fuel, and then we leave again. And so the risk is, when people look at this, when they hear of an 800-kilometre ride, you know, they go, I could never ride that far. When I talk about, well, it's 100 Ks a day on average, I think, oh, I could never do that. But it's just breaking it down, isn't it? And I think it's the same with the training, because we attract a lot of people who wouldn't have done, you know, something like this or big exercise for a long time. You know, they've gone through school, uni, workforce, family, and then they seem to find us and want to do this. So I think that point around easing into it is you know, just such strong and sound advice. And then the other point I really like that you make there is around acknowledgement and celebration of your achievements. And for us, a lot of people, again, are doing this on their own. And I guess one of the things that we encourage them to do is get onto their fitness app, their Strava or so forth, so that there's some measure of the incremental wins and advancements they're making. And what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, definitely. That's really important. And again, as I was saying, we're just always aware with Run Beyond how far they've come, what they've come from. And it's that, you know, eating an elephant scenario, you know, that one bite at a time, and just being aware of just how after a little bit of time, all of these bites add up, and all of a sudden you've taken a decent chunk out of the distance that you're working up to, or that you are completing, just being aware of those. Taking those little wins that give you the confidence to keep going.
Yeah. If we can return to Berlin, and the goal was publicly 220. You felt privately comfortable that you'd do under that. And did you really think you'd break 218?
No, that was kind of a really best case scenario, even better than what I imagined my best case scenario would be. And it wasn't really in my head until basically I'd already passed through the Brandenburg Gate with about 350 to go. I was sort of like I said, I had those splits in my arm, and I was kind of charting, okay, I actually started probably a little bit slower than I needed. And I sort of remember saying at 5Ks, I was 11 seconds behind where I was scheduled to be. And so I just kind of got in my head, okay, I'm going to check the splits at 10, really concentrate on lowering that 11-second deficit at the 10K point, and by then I think I was about 5 seconds behind, and then I had in my mind, okay, just get back on track, slowly ease into it, and by 15 Ks I was 2 seconds behind that 2:18.5 pace. And then in the second half, like I said, I was negative. I ended up with a negative split, so it got to sort of 25, 30 Ks, and I sort of said, okay, I'm sort of in a decent position here. I was like, maybe 20 seconds up on that time. And for me, it was just like, okay, I wasn't thinking about going under 2:18. It was like, okay, this is going to get hard now. I've got 20 seconds to play with, kind of thing. And And it wasn't until, like I said, I sort of got under the Brandenburg Gate, and I'd watched heaps of reruns of, Bekele or Kipchoge or whoever having done it, and Gebre Selassie having done it before. And I figured it was probably a bit under 400 meters from that point. And I think I had a little bit over a minute to get there. It was 2:16 something. And I thought, oh yeah, maybe I can get under 2:18 here, and just really sort of started winding up for the final sprint there.
And how do you celebrate?
Well, it was sort of Oktoberfest time at that time. So we actually did go down to Munich in a couple of days after that, which was a really fantastic experience. But funnily enough, it didn't eventuate. I had actually planned another marathon. I forget where it was now. It was somewhere else in Germany, Cologne, the following weekend. Kind of thought, I'm going all the way to Europe. I wouldn't mind, just getting the experience of doing something else. Obviously, it would be a lot slower, just kind of for the fun of it. But it didn't pan out. I had an adductor issue cropped up the week after, which was probably a good thing. And I did get to just sort of lay back and chill out and eat some junk food, and go to Oktoberfest.
Yeah, cool. And Dave, I'm going to finish this line of questions because I really want to talk to you about Run Beyond project and the impact that's having, and really flesh that out. So I just want to get help put this in perspective. This 2:18 marathon that you've run. What's the qualifying time for something like Com Games?
I think that was a qualifying time at the time. I think it was 2:19 at the time. I think in a way I might have sort of sparked a few people to run a lot faster, and that qualifying time's since gone down. I think it's about 2:12 or something amazing now. But know a couple of people sort of said, oh, Dave Criniti, he's not. I beat him in local fun runs. If he can run that sort of marathon, I can. I can run a faster marathon than that. And a couple of people sort of promptly did that. Maybe we're just sort of focused on their sort of fast 10Ks before then. But over the past sort of 3 or 4 years, we've definitely seen a lot more faster Aussies get out and about on the marathon, and so still Deke's record from way back in the early 80s remains intact though. So I don't know, maybe with a few fast guys chasing it, we might be able to do something about that soon.
And just very quickly, who's been your inspiration? You talk about Rob De Castella. Who for you was someone that you grew up admiring in this running space?
Yeah, when I first sort of got into running, I guess he was probably getting towards the tail end of his career, and I'd occasionally sort of see him doing a big marathon. Would be on sort of Wide World of Sports, the highlights on the weekend, and obviously Monas was kind of the main man with that longer stuff after that. So, and in my earlier years, I guess it was those two. I've got to say, I really have a soft spot, even now, for Yuki Kawauchi, who is a Japanese runner who, up until he won the Boston Marathon recently, used to work a full working week and still managed to run an enormous amount of marathons each year. And is coming up to, if it wasn't for COVID, he actually probably would have had his 100th sub 220 now. I think he's on about 96 or 97, averaging about 12 marathons a year. And, and I think there's like 10 to 15 of those are sub 210s as well, which is just phenomenal. But a really lovely guy too. I've had the chance to meet him at a couple of races, and he's just incredibly humble and wonderful personality as well. Yeah,
fantastic. Dave, we've just turned the corner and we're on the final stretch to the hotel, and this leg, it's a beautiful way to finish the first 100 plus K day, and
it looks great.
We see the sunrise the following morning above those islands in the background. And for those that are remembering where we are, we're in the Gulf of Thailand on the east coast, and it's just such beautiful scenery. Dave, it'd be remiss of me not to explore Run Beyond project and the amazing work that's doing, and the impact it's had on the kids that are coming into. We've got some monkeys there on the road, so riders, keep your legs up. And the kids that are coming a lot from refugee backgrounds. So explain to us Run Beyond project and how it started, the extent and what it's doing.
Yeah, so it started at Askell at Chezo back in 2015. And I don't know, it's seen sort of, as a school teacher, you get sort of lots of projects of a similar sort of nature around the school. And I kind of just started thinking, I really enjoy running so much. I've got so much out of it. And I'd like the kids to be able to have a chance to get something out of this too. And part of it came from sort of conversations with the kids, and you sort of see them on a Monday morning and, what did you guys get up to on the weekend? And, not a lot, just, watch TV and I might have been interstate running a marathon or something like that. And I thought, a lot of students sort of don't know what's out there and maybe don't have support mechanisms to introduce them to various communities. And I thought, well, my community is the running community. I'd like to give them a chance to see what that's about, see what they can get out of it, and and yeah, sort of started thinking about the skills that come with training for a race. And so together with Keith Hong, who was had just someone many of your riders might know is very influential in the running community. We've
actually got we're having a chat with Keith.
Cool.
Yeah.
Excellent. So I got a bit of a program together and sort of decided that would focus on goal setting, commitment and resilience. And the idea being, building the skills to set the goals and then commit to towards, working towards them and being resilient when things inevitably don't go to plan. And so our first cohort of kids were 5 students from Afghanistan and one kid from Somalia, and we targeted the half marathon at Hobart the following January 2016, and the kids worked for about 6 months and had various degrees of experience in running before that, but they all sort of put in a great amount of work and slowly progressed. Did a couple park runs, did a couple 10-kilometer races on the way, and gradually started to see that, hey, this thing that seemed mammoth and totally unachievable to begin with, after taking those bites one bite at a time, suddenly started to appear within their reach. And come 2016, they got there, and they all got a lot out of it, and which was great. And then along the way, people who saw this happening, teacher friends of mine who saw would celebrate these kids' achievements on social media, and other teachers would see this and say, oh, that's really cool. I'd like to do that in my school. And so this thing that essentially sort of started almost as a big school excursion, we started thinking, well, if we're going to sort of implement it in other schools and people are asking for advice, we'll keep the program consistent. And we gradually got some people on board and got a lot of the paperwork done needed to sort of set us up as a charity, so that we can provide this program for students in need in a range of schools. So you're just arriving to your destination.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so we became an official charity. I think it took us about a year and a half after that to finally get there. But now, the Run Beyond project has now grown, and we're in 17 schools at the moment, which is absolutely fantastic. And looking for more.
South Wales, Dave, or beyond?
We've got one school up in Bundaberg in Queensland as well, so which is great, and we're looking to hopefully be all around Australia before too long, because this is something that kids need all around the place.
Well, not just Australia, Dave. We've got some kids in the homes that we support in Thailand who are competing for this program, and they're out running laps of their local area and clocking up the Ks as well. And
fantastic.
It's an absolutely wonderful initiative. And runbeyondproject.com, is that correct? Or
the runbeyondproject.com, yes.
The Run Beyond Project, if people want to have a look. Dave, I've really loved that, and I've enjoyed hearing about what you've done personally in a running profession, and of course the Run Beyond Project is amazing and speaks to all of us on the call, because it's something we're all connected and passionate about. So thanks for joining us, Dave, and may your sub 218s continue for some time yet.
Pleasure, Pete, and good luck to everyone with the virtual challenge.
Good on you, mate. Over to you, CT.
Thank you both. That was incredible. Another great conversation. Dave, just before you you go there, we've had a question from Brad just around stretching, and for those that are still on the Zoom, ignore that you have to start warming up again. You don't unless you want to go again. But Dave, besides stretching, regarding best recovery after long runs, is there any value in walking in the cold salt water of the sea, or is that just for sports where you're getting a lot of knocks like football?
Well, yeah, okay, interesting question. I probably don't do as much stretching as I should. I must admit, for starters. And I probably would recommend doing more stretching than I do actually, and I tend to be probably a bit more reactive rather than proactive, and just sort of start doing that stuff once I start feeling something tighten up. But definitely, I think, look, these sort of things are not going to hurt. So I think, and even psychologically, I think they can be beneficial too. And additionally, when you're training with people, it's just a good social way to finish off your ride or your run or whatever you're doing. I know definitely on training camps, it's up in the mountains, it's quite a common sort of, put your feet in a cold stream once you're done, and definitely helps to get your core body temperature back down, probably get blood circulating back the way it should after exercise, after it's sort of pulled up in one area for all that time. And it's also that good sort of provides you that good chance to sort of debrief with whoever you're training with or competing with post race, where you're just sort of focused on on that only, rather than sort of getting on with packing up and on with the rest of your day. So even if nothing else, that psychological and social aspect makes it worthwhile.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you. And were you going to say? Oh,
No,
I thought you were going to say
there was
something
another
else.
question popped up.
No. So look, those that are still on the call, we've actually posted a link to a video that explains a bit more about the Run Beyond project. So that's in the Facebook group. Don't forget to log your Ks. So obviously very important. Head over to My Virtual Mission and get those logged. And yeah, as Pete said, this afternoon we're going to be jumping on with Palmer House at lunchtime today. So if you're up for another 25 Ks and want to say hello to the kids, I recommend you jump back on at 12. But thanks again, Dave, for jumping on, and thanks, Pete. And we will wish you a very great weekend and a long weekend for those in Sydney and New South Wales. So enjoy.
Thanks, Dave.
Thanks, guys. See ya.
See ya, mate.